Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Friday, the 18th of May, comes to you from London. And we start by looking at the dollar index, and the dollar rising still. We have been flat the last couple of days, but the medium-term chart is looking still quite bullish. We've got a new upside target here, 3% higher, but of course we need to move higher to activate that. So, and we've got this target 4% higher at 97.12 for the dollar index. So we are just seeing that continued dollar strength on the short and medium term charts. And if we look at the euro, just scraping along the bottom here at about 118, new upside and downside targets. Neither of them are activated, so we'll need to wait and see which way that goes. Looking at the yen, we're seeing that dollar strength really showing through on the medium-term chart. A very clear transition here, and of course a lot of Japanese traders watching the Ichimoku chart. So that is bullish for the dollar against the yen, weaker yen. We look at sterling. Sterling's still sitting at around 135. We do have downside targets below here, 133. There's one new one at 132, not yet activated. New lows would activate that. So we are seeing sterling deteriorating as well. And against the euro, sterling has been stronger this week, but it's just falling away now, as we see here on the medium-term chart. Looking at the Swiss franc, sterling still looking weak here with downside targets of 1.3, 2.5% downside. So across the board, sterling still struggling against the Australian dollar, sitting at 180, and again just struggling to break higher on that short-term chart. Downside targets 178, 176. So it does look like we're getting stuck in the 170s there. Bitcoin this morning is up 0.5%. But we have had a pretty tough week for Bitcoin. We do have downside targets here of 7,800, further 2% downside. This bigger target here of 6,175 is actually 23% below where we are now, and we will get a new downside target on this thrust as well. So this sell-off in Bitcoin is causing some concern, and the medium-term chart just not managing to move above the cloud, so strong resistance there. US stocks were pushing higher again yesterday. We're just seeing the market recovery continuing. We were fairly flat on the S&P 500 index. The Nasdaq 100 was down just under 0.5%. So we are just this week is a fairly flat week for the US market. We're seeing that here as the red candle on the end of the weekly chart. We are just flat across the board here. We're seeing that in the Dow as well. And the broader US 2000 index we're seeing here is just starting to break to new highs. So it's interesting that the broader market is doing better. That was up 0.5% yesterday. The E-mini S&P is up 0.2%. The Nasdaq E-mini is up 1/3%. So it does look like the US market will open higher today. The UK market broke to a new all-time high yesterday, but only just. It's not it's not a clear constant move up. We've broken the high that we saw in January just, but that's still a good sign, but too early to claim that as a breakout. And of course, we'll need to see what happens with the US market. Looking at the FTSE 250, we see here that was also breaking higher as well. So UK stocks looking pretty good, and it's rare that they lead US stocks in a recovery. The DAX not yet making new highs, of course. One of the main drivers, of course, for UK market going higher is the heavy weighting of oil stocks, BP, Shell, pushing the index higher. And keep an eye out today for our UK stocks report. There's Etradax not making new highs, but is still looking pretty bullish on all three time frames. The CAC Quarante did make new highs yesterday, pushing higher, so we are seeing new highs there as well. And if you saw our report last week, you'll have seen that we were quite favourable about the CAC, and in fact there's a commentary on that coming out today as well. Looking at the Japanese market, it was up about just under 0.5%, so just pushing higher. Hang Seng also looking a little bit stronger. Japan probably stronger on that weaker yen against the dollar. Chinese market was up quite strongly, up over 1%. So we're looking a bit better here short term, but the medium term chart is still a worry. Looking at the Indian market, we were actually down, and we are just risking breaking below this trend. We'll need to see what happens next week on the short term chart. The Australian market was also down very slightly. A very flat week for the Aussie index. Crude oil yesterday, Brent crude did actually break above $80, and that was in the headlines. We've pulled back from that, but we do have targets to 82, 83, a new one to 85 if we can break higher and activate that. So it does look like crude oil will go higher still, and we're seeing on WTI targets of between 1.5 and 6.4% upside on the short-term chart into the mid 70s. If we look at US nat gas, sitting at $2.84, has barely moved really in the week. Taking a look at gold, we see here that the gold price is just teetering along at this 1290 level, and we are just starting to put in a recovery here. We've got an upside target on silver as well of $16.80. Coming back to gold here, flat along the bottom. We have broken down below the cloud. We did talk about this yesterday, and again we do cover this in the top 10 things report, which goes out today. Um, Bond yields in the US maintaining their strength, sitting at 3.1% and holding what has been a very strong week. We'll need to see how we close today. We've been as high as 3.13. We're just edging up all the time on the yield. And if we look at German bonds, recovering from this morning from a pretty bad week, we see that there. So just edging lower there as well. Lots of downside targets. So the bond market really looking like it's going to have a bad year. Looking at Apple, we were down just under 2/3% overnight. So we're just seeing the US tech stocks just struggling to drive things forward here. Amazon was also down 1/3%, and Google, which has really been the laggard, was down 1/3% as well. Just hasn't managed to make it back above the medium-term chart yet. And we have got downside targets here for Google, not yet activated the medium-term chart. Quite a few more targets. Facebook sitting in that mid 180s, just can't get back above the high set in January. And if we look at Microsoft, it was down 1% as well, but the trend very much in train there. That's it for today. Have a great weekend. Until Monday, happy charting. See you then.